Hemingway's group. Um, for the start of this discussion, we're going to start discussing what are we going to put on our research papers as well. In my case, I'm going to write it. I'm going to write it in referring to Hemingway's style of dialogue, because his style of dialogue is very concise. He normally some types of authors talk in a more diverse manner. Well, normally Hemingway gets straight to the point, always being very general in what the type of characteristics he wants to express for his characters, and the reader has to sometimes infer or normally see context clues referring to the characters within those dialogues. What do you say, Alejandro?
For example, I personally don't like the way Hemingway writes. Therefore, I would like to base my research paper more on something that's discussed, for example, love, and how, for example, in this book, as we discussed in the first chat, in the different works we have seen in The Sun Also Rises and A Farewell to Arms, is manifested in different ways, and the men and women have different roles in this situation. Therefore, I would like to base my topic around a theme of that sort. I don't know what you guys think about it.
So Santiago, you're gonna do a more form-based discussion, and Alejandro is gonna do a more content-based discussion. And I think that for my research paper, I'm going to do a mix of both. Something I have in mind is to use or to discuss Hemingway's use of the word and, because if you've read
And
him, you know that he and A&D, because you know
Hmm.
that he in his writing he does this and that. He doesn't like to use periods. He uses and a lot, especially in the shorter books like The Sun Also Rises and The Old Man of the Sea and short stories. So I'm gonna use his use of and I don't know what I'm doing, but I also want to include that some way in my research paper.
no, my I want my research paper to be about the macho figure in Hemingway books because I think nowadays with modern literature, the vast majority of it focuses in minority groups, in women, and not in the classic macho men profile that Hemingway has in his books. Like I want to go deeper in it and compare the characters and how women are in the majority of the books just complements to the man.
Yeah, I was also thinking about doing about the role of women in Hemingway's stories, and as Alejandro said, I think that even though in the in the characters' lives, and as Hemingway describes it in the book, they don't seem to be very significant. At the end, I think they do end up being very significant in Hemingway's overall writing style. So I think it's a very interesting topic to explore.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah,
What
completely.
Mateo?
I want to ask Mateo Osorio about the use of the word and. If you can expand it in it a bit, your argument, because I think that's a really interesting part of Hemingway writing.
Yeah, I want to add on to what Alejandro just said because it really affects the syntax. It really affects Hemingway's syntax and what he wants to express in his story.
Yeah, sure. Give me 1 second. I'll open up the a rough draft of my of the author study, and I'll give you an example, a specific example of
I
what I
was
mean.
absent the
With
previous
uses
two
and.
classes, so I don't really have a draft yet.
What
Okay,
about you?
I forgive you.
Thank you.
I have started writing some pieces and brainstorming, but haven't concluded.
Could we
The,
take a look?
Oh, so
yeah,
the example I gave, sorry, the example I gave for and is the very last sentence of A Farewell to Arms, which goes or the last paragraph. But after I came out and shut the door and turned off the light, it wasn't any good. It was like saying goodbye to a statue. After a while, I went out and left the hospital and walked back to the hotel in the rain. That last sentence where he says, after all, I went out and left the hospital and walked back to the hotel in the rain. That's what I want to analyze because instead of saying after I walked out, I walked to the no sé qué, or using punctuation. Instead, he makes different things using the word and that kind of speeds up the rhythm of the novel, I think.
I like your idea because I think your essay will be um
Original.
more craft based rather than plot based. I think that
Yeah,
my
I think
my essay, for example, is mostly based on like maybe not on the. I mean, yeah, it's like based mostly on the plot and like the role of and like the role of certain characters in the plot. I think yours is like purely craft based, so I think that's interesting.
It's very
Yeah.
interesting when
yeah,
we
the
analyze.
reason I chose to use craft instead of theme is because Hemingway novels, in my opinion, they're quite flat. Except, I mean, except for The Old Man of the Sea, which is an exception. But A Farewell to Arms and The Sun Also Rises, which are the two novels that we read or are in the process of reading, the stories and the plots are very flat, I believe. There's not a lot of depth to it, and I think it's kind of a bit cliche. So if for example, if I gave you a 30-second summary of the two books, you'd think, yeah, it's just like a normal love story or it's just a normal war story. So I don't think it's very interesting, and I think that the reason that Hemingway is so famous and is so celebrated is more because of his style, not so much because of
Yep.
his
Uh,
Stories, yeah.
My
but
research
I
paper
think
I
another thing
included
that makes
an
Hemingway
earnest.
such an important writer is his characters. How important in each novel just one character is, and how deep he goes into in the character's personality, and how profoundly he makes the reader almost know like the character in real life.
Yeah. I would like to include a quote that I want to include in my report. A quote that has to do with what Hemingway.
Alvarez.
Santiago. I can't
Pretty
seem
much
to
was.
hear you.
All right. Let me try to say it a bit more clearly, if you would like. Um. A ver, let's see. Okay. This is a quote from Hemingway, extracted from one of his works. Well, not exactly from one of his works, from what he said in an interview. A writer's style should be direct and personal, his imagery rich and earthy, and his words simple and vigorous, which is basically what he wants to express in the majority of his novels. If you notice, in The Sun So Rises, for example, his style is very direct. He's always trying to speak, expressing what's happening to Jake, for example, what he's going through, what he sees, what he does with his friends, and the imagery that he expresses throughout the city of Paris and throughout Spain. He demonstrates a certain visual characteristic, a certain synesthesia that makes the reader know where the characters are, and imagine what they are feeling, what they are doing at the same moment. And in relation to his style of wording, his words, they are simple, they're vigorous, they get to the point, and you can understand deeply what they Hemingway wants to say. As Mateo Osorio said, it's very park, but I don't know how to say it in English or how to say it in Spanish. It's muy parco. So he doesn't say much, but he says it with so much with so much vigorosity.
Straightforwardness.
Exactly, with straightforwardness, and he gets straight to the point.
So, for example, we have been discussing about like our research papers, but I would like to know a little bit of what you guys thought, about the novel, the analysis you made that made you come to that conclusion of I want to base my research paper on that topic, and maybe see what themes were important for us, and see basically what the author is trying to say or what themes are being discussed. I don't know, for example, in my personal opinion, I think something that's very interesting is that characters in this book and oftentimes in Hemingway's works are like dissatisfied with life. I don't know if you feel the same
You're
way.
talking about The Sun Also Rises.
Yes, like,
All right.
and I just feel that, for example, they they are just like very comfortable with life. I don't see like any extraordinary events taking place throughout the book. it's just like the same things over and over again, and there's not like someone like pushing it against and past like a certain point or line. Like they're really like comfortable, um, just being that way, like on the normal structure of things. I don't know what you think about it.
Well, I think that's interesting because it's like today in class we're talking about cotidianidad, like the daily life. So it's
Cotidianity.
yeah, it's more like a portrayal of that. So it's like, for example, say imagine like Hannah Montana, for example, which is just like a show that portrays the cotidianidad of like a high school or any other teen sitcom of that nature.
I
So I
think
think I
that
think that Hemingway's
that's a bad
stories,
example,
especially,
Mateo.
bueno, any other como teen sitcom that portrays like the typical life of like high school, you know. So yeah, it's very flat and it lacks any like
Depth.
true meaning or depth exactly, but it's just a portrayal of the cotidianity or cotidianidad. So I think that especially in The Sun Also Rises is just a portrayal of that daily lifeness of Paris or Spain or whatever the place it's taking place of that specific time period and how men would live their lives at that time.
Eh,
I
for
disagree.
example, no,
I
I wanted
disagree a lot with Mateo.
to add something about Hemingway writing. We can see in all the novels parts of his life represented in the books. For example, in
The sun
The
also.
Sun Also Rises, Hemingway was an expatriate from his country in the Lost Generation of in Paris and the Lost Generation. He went as an American writer to live in Paris in his life. He also lived in Cuba and had a lot of Caribbean houses. We can see that in The Old Man and the Sea. And he went to the Great War, serving in the army. The same we can say as the main character, for Will to Arms. Another interesting point we can dig in is how the books represent the life of Ernest Hemingway.
Hmm.
Mateo, I want
Yes,
to hear your
that's true.
opinion.
I think that the something you have to keep we need to remind ourselves is that I agree with Alejandro in that the books in some way Ernest Hemingway's life. Ernest Hemingway loved boxing, he loved bullfighting, he drove an ambulance for the army,
Yes, but those are like
he
very
lived in
como
fish.
insignificant
So
details of the book.
Mateo Galvis, can you please stop interrupting while we have the argument, please?
No.
thank you, Mr. Regido.
All right, Mateo,
Um,
please.
I wanted to go back to what Mateo Galvi said
Hmm.
about his books being a portrayal of life, like a normal life, like cotidianidad. And I disagree heavily because, well, one is the life of a soldier, which is not
The
very
life of what?
usual, and the other one is a life of a soldier. And the
No,
other
well,
is the
I mean,
life
I mean,
of a very rich.
I mean, like cotidianidad within the context. So, for example, like cotidianidad within the context of being a soldier. Like, how is the daily life of a soldier, or
But
how is the
Mateo,
daily life of
Mateo,
a prostitute, or
Mateo,
how is
Well,
the
yes,
daily
but
life?
all
But
books are like that.
but
but I
Mateo,
also think it
That's
like
the definition.
that argument falls by itself. How many people have been blown up in an ambulance they drove? That's not something that happens every day. Or how many people go and fish and
Exactly.
cannot catch a fish for 86 days and catch a giant marlin that gets eaten by sharks?
I was talking about the sun also rises
No,
rather than
no,
the.
and the sun also rises the same. How many
And the
people
sun
have
also rises.
like
Also, it's
so
about
so
very rich
so
people in Europe that travel all over.
Yeah,
That's
well,
not very usual.
how is their daily life? How is their
but I just think
la
like
vida
the,
cotidiana de
How
esa
do
gente?
they relate to each other? In the Old Man and the Sea, it's about a fisherman. In Paris, it's about an elite group of war people, with people who lived throughout war. And in the Farewell to Arms, it's soldier life.
but it's also like even though maybe it may relate to the life of the author of Hemingway and everything. I just don't think he goes to such like a deep analysis or understanding of what's happening. It's just using familiar events to him in order to write
Yeah,
stories. So
and it's
even
like
though it may relate, it's
and
not
it's
really like
and
such an
it's
important aspect.
insignificant details such as the boxing, for example. I mean, it doesn't have a large impact on the
It
plot or
serves,
anything. Like
yes, it
No,
just
yes,
serves
it
to tell a
does.
story.
it's just like
Sun also rises. There's a part when what's the guy named Raúl? No, Pedro? No, okay.
No,
The
no,
Spanish guy, the bullfighter,
probably
where
right.
he has to fist fight Robert and Jake and everyone.
In order to win over Brett. Wait, where did he
Exactly.
go? Equipo, where are you?
Bueno,
Okay,
sigamos.
he'll come back.
All right. Let's continue. Let's continue.
Okay, and also as we started discussing this and everything, it made me made a connection with a theme I previously discussed about identity and dissatisfaction, and it goes back also to the think of the all of the alcohol that's involved and the drugs like around the novel, and we could see that maybe those two things I previously mentioned go linked with alcohol because it means that they don't have anything that's fulfilling for them in life, so therefore they recur to this type of substances and activities because they really don't have anything else to do, and it's just a way of feeling like that empty space that they have inside them. I just think that that may be a point we could make.
Yeah, that's very smart. I, however, don't think that I agree with your point of the alcohol and there's an empty space. I just think you're missing what the empty space is. I don't think it's the loss of identity. I think it has a lot to do with manhood and like masculinity and like and being a man. Because if you look at The Sun Also Rises, it's a book about a man who loves a woman and he's uncomfortable with himself and his masculinity and he feels he has to prove it and he has to fist fight everyone and go with the bulls and dance and do all these masculine things. And the same happens with the Farewell Storms. He has to prove somehow that he's
Man.
stronger than war
So
and he's a man that can take a war. So I think that that empty hole that you're describing is completely accurate. Just it's about masculinity.
okay, so and
That's what I think.
that could also be tied into the idea that throughout Hemingway's books, well, the ones we have seen, and especially in this one, we have seen that love is something that if it takes place, it's not like something actually really meaningful or anything. So maybe it's not only that manhood, but it's also that manhood combined with the fact that there are no any fulfilling relationships throughout the book. That could also mean that,
But for a certain context, right?
Yeah, but there is no bigger expression of masculinity than a relationship with a woman.
of course, and his like impotence of having sex that you previously mentioned.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant.
El
All right.
internet. Ahora sí.
All right.
Okay. Oh, Mateo, you're muted.
I'm so sorry. I had some technical difficulties in the
En
chat.
La Paz de Santos.
La Paz de Santos.
All right.
Hey,
No worries.
did you hear my argument contradicting Mateo about what he said about quotidianity?
Go ahead.
Well, no,
Good.
what I was saying was how common it is that a soldier gets blown up in an ambulance. Uh,
well,
fisherman.
in World War II, I think it's fairly common.
No, it wasn't
World War
World
One,
War II,
sorry.
Mateo. It was
Yeah, World
great.
War One.
Please get your facts correctly done, Mateo. Please.
Mhm.
No, I think Mateo is very I think Mateo's wrong in when he says oh well, you're very right when you say that the book is about the familiarness and like the cotidianidad of the situation it's in. Of course, that's applies for all books. The Old
Yeah.
Man of the Sea is the cotidianidad of an old man who fishes. This one is the
Yeah.
cotidianidad of an impotent man whose name is Jake. This one is about you can't
The
just say that. It's
of a
about
soul that falls in love.
exactly.
However, I think it has like certain insight, for example, to the reader because it allows the reader to look into a different depth. Like it's not the same as if I read a book like that would happen, for example, today nowadays in 2016. Like it doesn't bring any insight to the reader unless a very outrageous event happens, you know. So I think that for a person in 2016 to read Hemingway's books, although the book or the plot lacks any significant event or lacks any depth, I think it still provides insight to the reader in the sense that it allows you to look into the cotidianidad of that time period, even though it doesn't have any como,
But how does it?
I disagree, but let's go on.
Well, no, I think we had a great chat today.
Yeah, we actually
We
did.
we
We had a very
in
productive argument.
some important topics such as cotidianity in Hemingway, the craft about
Masculinity.
art, and masculinity. So thank you very much once again, and hope you do great in your papers.
See
Yeah.
you next time
So-
on Hemingway Radio.
Cállese.
See you all.
Bueno,
Copia-
corte.
Thank you. Bueno, cortamos en 3.